of Iyar. It's Bob Iyar because yesterday was here. Oh, you found them. Welcome everyone who's joining me in person. If you're watching live or the recording, please leave a like or comment. It gives me chizuk to know that you are watching this. And I'm not setting up all my cool gear for no reason. Siftach has moved, so the view is a little bit different. For anyone wondering, when people come, they're like, "This is the place where I know it from the videos." Okay, let's jump right in. So Iyar, we're in the month of Iyar, the Jewish month of the year. It's the second month when we count from Nisan, and the eighth month when we count from Tishrei. So first, let's dedicate today's class to the all of those who lost their lives defending the land of Israel, men, women, and children who were killed in terrorist attacks in the defense of Eretz Israel since 1860. The total number this year, unfortunately, is 24,213 men, women, and children. Let us let them be avenged, and let us commemorate them with learning more Torah and adding more light in their schus. Okay, Iyar marks the beginning of the second month of the spring trio. These are the fire months. The 3 months of the spring are Nisan, Iyar, and Sivan. In Nisan, we came out of our winter hibernation following this miraculous rebirth of Pesach. And in Iyar, we're starting to become more self-assured and much more self-assured and expressive and outward focused in this month. So we're emerging from our cocoon where our butterfly is flying outwards in this month. Hi, just in time. Welcome. Hello. Hi, Lavi and Shira. Hi, guys. We just brought comfy chairs. Okay, we literally just started. So settled in. Here's the source sheets. I'm so happy you guys came. Duh. So we're gonna have a lot of the from all the months. From all the months in the year, these 3 months are actually linked together as a trio, right? A lot of months are linked together in different ways, but these 3 months that we're experiencing, Nisan, Iyar, and Sivan, are linked together more than any other month. They come together. Even their astrological signs come together as a trio. The astrological signs of Nisan, of Aries, is the sheep. Of Taurus, which we're in Iyar right now, is the ox. And of Sivan is Gemini, the twins. So these 3 actually are a succession of stages, one that follows the other. So not just being like linked together and connected, they're actually connected to each other as like a number 1, 2, 3 that follow one another and build up on one another. So Iyar, and just to recap, for anyone new to the Rosh Chodesh Circle, to the way that we do this class, we base most of our teachings on the book of Formation, Sefer Yetzirah, written by Avraham Avinu, the earliest Kabbalistic text that we have. And he goes through, in this book, it goes through the months of the years, each of the months, and it gives us some glimpses into the DNA, the spiritual DNA of the months. And we go through the name of the month, which is Iyar, the astrological sign of the month, which is Taurus, which the symbol is an ox, symbolized by an ox. We go through the letter each of the month. It says Hashem created the letter in Sefer Yetzirah. It says Hashem created the month of Iyar through the letter Vav. We're going to be talking about the letter Vav. I actually printed out, so if anyone doesn't know how the letter Vav looks, ta-dam. We like to touch on the history of the month as well. And we even talked about the tribe of the month. There's 12 tribes and 12 months. The tribe of this month is Issachar. And we also talk about a bodily sense in every month that we can grow through during that month. And the bodily sense that we most connect to in this month that is heightened is our hirhur, our thoughts. The power of our thoughts, and our bodily organ that is connected to this month is our right kidney. Okay, I think we got it all. Oh, and last but not least, very importantly, is the permutation of Hashem's name in each month. It says Hashem created the worlds, and Kabbalah tells us that Hashem formed the world through his tetragrammaton, Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey. And there are 12 different ways that these letters that Hashem created the world through can be rearranged. And it's said in the book of Yetzirah that the letters Hashem rearranges the letters in every month, and that brings a new life flow, a new flow of life, a new flow, different type of energy flow to this world. And by understanding through Kabbalah the different types of flows, through energetic flows through the letters, we can understand a little bit for there what type of energy we have in this month. So in this month, last month, Nisan was the only month where the letters flowed in their perfect order, Yod, Hey, Vav, and Hey. And in this month they begin to shift. So in this month we have Yod and Hey in the beginning, so it's in the right order. And then the end of the month, or the last 2 letters, is instead of Vav Hey, we have Hey Vav reversed. So we actually see that that connects a lot to the energy of the month. We'll maybe get to that today. So back to the trios. So these months are built up on each other, and it's said in different parables. In one place, it's taught that Nisan. Oh, this is the coolest. So the basis of most of it is that the three these three first months of the year, each stem from the different. This is from the different lines, branches of the Eitz Chaim. Now, if you want to hear more about this, you can watch. I guess I'll link the class that we had on Sunday, the Tanya class, teaching us literally the Eitz Chaim, the Sphirot chart, the Kabbalistic Sphira chart, and where different things stem from. And on the Sphira chart, through the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, we have three basic lines or three basic branches and sources. We have the right side, which is Chesed, the left side, which is Gvura, severity, the right side, which is kindness, the left side, with is strength and severity, and the middle branch, the trunk, which is Tiferet, which is balance and harmony, and compassion. And these 3 months actually stem from these three sides of the tree of life, these three branches. So they are the roots. So Nisan is rooted in Chesed, and we see that there's tremendous Chesed from Hashem. Hashem is freeing us from creating miracles for us. In Iyar, it's the month of severity, the month of judgment, and we see our judgment mostly in that in this month of Iyar, every single day we're counting the Omer, and we're doing a self-introspection. So that's a judgment of ourselves, not a judgment in necessarily a negative way, but it's a self-judgment. It's a counting of oneself. It's doing an inward accounting of all of our actions, making sure that every single day is accounted for. So it's a month of actually self-growth. Self-judgment means working through ourselves, growing, judging all of the parts of ourselves, the good parts, the bad parts, making sure we're utilizing all of our great strengths for positivity. So it's a month of self-growth. And then in Sivan, it comes from the middle, from Tiferet, from balance, and it's and that's when we receive the Torah, and we'll talk about that next month. So it's also, it also is taught that Nisan is the month of falling in love with Hashem. It's the dating, the courting of Hashem. Iyar is engagement, it's the in-between time. And Sivan is the marriage, right? Sivan is one that says we received the Torah. It was a marriage between the Jewish people and Hashem. But the proposal, right? Hashem takes us out and says, will you marry me? And we say yes. And now is the in-between time where we're working towards the marriage, getting ready for the wedding. And so in this time, we're now getting ready for our wedding to Hashem. So really, now going back to the letter, we said every month is formed with a letter. Iyar is formed with the letter Vav, right? Vav is a connecting letter. It's brought down in the Psachim that anytime there's, right, we also know in Hebrew language and also in Gemara Psachim that anytime there's Vav, it connects two things, right? So I say Rachel K'tzia and Tiferet, in Hebrew I would say Vit Tiferet. So I would add a Vav to connect two things. Anytime we connect two things, we have a Vav to connect them. So it's amazing that Iyar, which is the month that joins Nisan, the month where we were taken out of Mitzrayim by Hashem, till when we received the Torah, from redemption till revelation, that Iyar is the month that connects the two of them through the Vav. Vav is also in Hebrew actually like a hook or a vav triya. It's something that you hang something on. It connects things. It connects your whatever you need to hang to the wall, right? So Vav is the month of connection, and it's bridging the gap between bridging that space. It's the space that connects the Nisan to Sivan. Also, in Pesach, we were talking about Nisan through how we cleansed. We had a full cleansing of all ego, of all chametz, a bittul, of like emptying out of all of our vessels. And now we said that after Pesach, we now reintegrate with chametz. We now rebuild ourselves up and start to reincorporate chametz and ego and self and sense of self back into the space of bittul. So with Nisan, we were completely empty vessels. Now we're reintegrating into a life where we're not just receiving from Hashem, where we have to find a stronger sense of self and act and not just receive. So in this month, we're building up from the cleanse that we had, this like detox, the chametz detox, and now we're incorporating chametz, which is physical chametz, but really spiritual chametz, which is an ego, a healthy ego, a sense of self, a sense of who am I. And we do this through the counting of the Omer. Now, whoever counts this first Omer, just to refresh, if anyone is new to this, counting the Omer is a mitzvah for every single day, 49 days, from the second day of Pesach until receiving the Torah on Shavuot, the next Jewish holiday. Every single day there's a positive commandment in the Torah to count the Omer. The Omer is the name of the korban that was brought, the korban of barley that was brought on Pesach. And it was an offering brought, a mincha, it was a barley offering brought, and from then on they can eat all of the new grain that grew that year. It became yashan instead of chadash. Now, that's why it's called Omer. Sefira to Omer means that every single day we count. Today is the first day of the Omer, the second day, third day, fourth day, so on and so forth. Now, in addition to just saying today is the first day of the Omer, making a blessing, underneath it we say that we will rectify, every single day we rectify another midah, another attribute, another, how would you say midah in English? Another, besides for attribute, it's a quality, yeah, another trait, another character trait. We work on our character in this month, and we're developing our character every single day. Now, if you look in the Siddur, it says the first day it says I'm counting chesed shebechesed, right? And the next day gevura shebechesed. So we actually learned that what are we counting? What are these words? Not actually everyone knows. Some people just read it, and what they are the we said that there's seven. There's seven. What was the word we used? Character traits. There's seven midos that we have, seven general qualities that we have in our personality, and emotive traits, seven different types of emotive traits. And each week of the 7 weeks, so 49 days is 7 weeks. Each week we're refining and working through on elevating and refining that quality in that character trait and that quality. The first week we're working on chesed, which is our quality of kindness, our attribute of kindness. The next week is gevura, which is our attribute of boundaries. The third week is tiferes, which is this week, right? Tiferes is balance, is harmony, balance, and beauty. We're refining that quality that we have, that emotive quality, that character trait. The fourth week we're refining netzach, which is determination to succeed, to be success-driven, to be determined to win and achieve all of our goals. The fifth week we're elevating our quality of hod. Hod is thankfulness, it's gratitude, it's saying that it's being a vessel of being devoted to a cause and being grateful. Thank you. And the sixth week we're elevating, where we're working through the quality of Yisod. Yisod means foundation, and it's the quality of attachment and connection and bonding and deeply connecting to other people, our relationships between ourselves and other people. And the seventh week we refine our quality, our character trait of Malchus. Malchus is leadership. It's also our ability to create, to receive from all of the other attributes and bring it into action. Malchus has a lot of functions, and all of these things that I'm talking about are much more deeply explained in our Sunday night Tanya classes, which also on this channel also will be linked. So if you want to hear more about these qualities, that's there. This is just a very brief synopsis. Malchus is our speech. It's taking all of the different feelings that we have and all the different qualities that we have and putting it into action and being able to lead through our speech. So each week we work through developing our personality, developing our traits, and within Chesed we work on a different part of Chesed, where there's an inter-inclusion. We learn of each of these qualities, each of our character traits, communicate with one another in a very deep way because they incorporate each other inside of them. So we don't just work on our kindness, we work on balancing kindness through Gevura. So throughout this whole 49 days, we're transitioning from in Nisan, when Hashem took us out. There's actually a pasuk or a verse by King Solomon, by Shlomo, in Shir Hashirim that portrays these 3 months perfectly. The pasuk is Mashcheni acharecha narutza havieni melech hadara, which means pull me towards you, we will chase after you, bring me to your innermost chamber. It's a verse of a bride to her beloved, to her king. And it's said that Mashcheni is referring to how our interaction and our relationship with God in Nisan. In Nisan, Hashem had to pull us out. It was a one-sided relationship. We just received, right? In Pesach, we said, if we listened to the last month's class, Pesach, we were vessels, and there was no avoda. We were just taken out. We had no qualities. We had no sense of self. We were like sheep. And in the astrological trio, we were the sheep that were just following, being taken and fed by its master. All of our needs were taken care of us were taken care of for us by Hashem. Then we transitioned to bull. Now, because we were receiving, we now have to transition to having a true relationship with Hashem to get to where we want to get to, which is the third part of the verse. So Mashcheni is Hashem pulling us out. To get to Havieni Melech Hadarav, where we're intimate, where we're bonding with Hashem in His innermost chamber, where it's a two-way relationship, we first have to develop our sense of self. If I'm not a self, then there's no true unity. There's no you and I in a relationship if I'm just a sheep following its leader. So here we're developing ourselves so that we can have a self to provide in this relationship with Hashem. So we know who we are, so we can build up our sense of identity, our sense of self, our midos, our quality traits, know who we are to bring to the relationship with Hashem. Who are we to say yes to God if we don't even know who we are, if we have no sense of self, if we're just following blindly, a sheep following its master, right? In Judaism, we're not supposed to just be blind sheep following. We have to include it in our own voice, our own opinions, our own unique flavor in serving God, our own thoughts, our own questions. We're supposed to question and grapple, and there's so many different paths in serving God, and we're supposed to bring our own selves to this, right? And that's what a karban is. So if we're going to the Parsha, this whole Chumash actually, Vayikra, is actually talking about karbanos, about sacrifices, and we learn that sacrifices in an inner way are bringing a sacrifice of ourselves, right? And it says in Vayikra, the first verse is Adam Yakrev Michem Karban Lashem, right? Vayikra, one of the first verses begins when a man from you wants to bring a sacrifice to Hashem, and we learn that linguistically it's really unusual. It says a man who wants to bring from you a karban to God. It should say a man from amongst you who wants to bring, and the reverse order or the unusual linguistic actually points us to a deeper teaching that the true carbon, that a man who wants to bring a service, mikem. The real carbon that you're actually bringing is mikem. It should be something from yourself. If you really want a carbon, which means closeness, hirov, which means bonding. If you really want to come close to Hashem, which is why people bring a carbon, bring the sacrifice from mikem, from your inside. Bring your own self, your unique individual self. Don't just be a sheep in a mass group of like flock and a cult following blindly its leader. Figure out who you are, what makes you uniquely new. Talk and have a personal relationship with God. L'chaim.
Slaughter your inner behemoth.
Exactly.
Are these connected to the months, all is provided by Hashem, and then the transition to having a relationship?
Yes.
So that's
Exactly. So let's reconnect it. So
Nisan
actually, the idea of the carbon, of the sacrificing of an animal, where does an animal fall in? Again, in Tanya we talk about how we have two souls. We have a godly soul and we have an animal soul. What we're sacrificing to God is our animal soul. And what we're actually working on in these 7 weeks of Siras Omer is our animal soul. We're developing the character traits and the quality traits, our character and quality of our animal soul, which is why we bring this only twice a year that I think that we bring the korban, a sacrifice of barley. Almost all other times it's a sacrifice of flour offering. A barley offering is brought down in Gemara that a barley is the food of an animal and flour is the food of humans. And here we're specifically calling it Siras Omer, which is the barley offering, because what we're bringing as a sacrifice is the barley, is the food of our animal soul. What we're bringing to God, what we're bringing in this part, what we're working on developing during this month of Iyar, which is all of Iyar is Siras Omer. Every single day of Iyar, we're working on developing the character of our animal soul. So we're not just neglecting and saying, well, I have a godly soul, let me ignore my animal soul, which is my physical urges, my physical desires, my materialistic self, my even not good parts of myself. Rather, I'm using those parts of myself to use those for holiness. To say, yes, I have urges for physical things, let me do those in a way that's godly, by doing it with kindness, inviting someone else, make a beautiful physical home, but using it to serve God by having guests, by raising a beautiful Jewish family, right, or a beautiful family. So we can not ignore our animal beastly self or selfish self, but rather utilize those parts for God. And that's why this time we're actually working on our inner animal, on the animal inside of us. And every one of us has different types of animals. Some of us are and a combination of all the different types of animals. So we're identifying who we are at our physical primal self, and then working and growing through that during this month. So in order that we then come to, so let's go back to the verse of Shlomo Melech. We said in Nisan it's Mashcheni, Hashem is pulling us out. And in Iyar, it's Acharecha Narutza, the next part of the verse. We will run after you. We, in plural, why is it saying God will take us and we will run in plural? We is my godly soul and my animal soul. All the parts of me are going to be chasing after God. I'm now catching up. I'm running to catch up to that love that God has for me. And Nisan, Hashem showed us so much love for taking us out. And this month, I'm playing catch up. I'm building myself up to have a sense of self that can then love Hashem back. And then, then it's both of us. Hashem brings us into the room with him, and we're both united in this two-way bond, which was represented by the twins of the two people that are in a relationship. Only when I've developed myself, so that there's a you and a me, can we then be in a relationship. So this ties in as well the 3 signs. So first we have the sheep, which is just following its leader. Then we have a bull, which is self-centered, which is driven to get what it needs for itself, which is what we're doing in this month. It's more of a self-focused month, because every day we're focusing on another character trait of ourself. And it's not negative selfishness, it's self-focused in order that we can grow to be a person or a unique individual that can then bring that into a relationship after. So it's a self that is a very essential part of growth. So it's a more self-focused month, an ox, and it's a very powerful month, because the power of a Taurus, of an ox, of a bull is very powerful. It's a very strong Gevura Dika month. And that's where we see the connection, again, that this month of Iyar stems from the left side of the Gevura side of the Tree of Life. That the power is a very strong Gevura power. It's a very headstrong, powerful month. There's a lot of light in this month. Koach, it's a very strong month. So we have a lot of power in this month, a lot of energy flow, tremendous flow of energy in this month. It's a fire sign, right? Actually, Taurus is a earth sign, but the 3 months in general are ruled by the planet of the fire sign. So it's a fire era within an earth sign, and we'll talk about that in a minute.
What sign are you?
I'm Libra. Huh. Okay, let's talk more about this trio of months. Something else that's really beautiful is that during this time, right, originally, going back to the story of Pesach, we are supposed to leave Mitzrayim on the 14th day of Nisan, and then 7 days later we would receive the Torah. It would take very few days, 7 days, to travel out of Egypt through the desert, go to the Mount Sinai, and receive the Torah. Now, what happened? It ended up being that it was pushed off for 49 days, and then on the 50th day we received the Torah. Right? Um, why was it so? So we learn that it's a Kabbalah tells us that it's a mashal from the nida. That when a woman is nida, which is a spiritual state, a spiritual impurity of tuma, she needs 7 days of separation from her husband until she can reunite with her husband. And after those 7 days, she's cleansed and she goes to the mikvah, and now she reunites with her husband. And we learned that similarly, the Jewish nation was in a state of tuma. When we were left Mitzrayim, we were in the lowest state. It says we were naked. In the Haggadah, when we read the Haggadah, it says we were naked and afraid, not naked and afraid, Erev ve'erva, right? We were completely naked. We had no merits. We were on the lowest level. We were very contaminated by the spiritual depravity of the Egyptians, and also in a very bad place. So from this spiritual tuma state of tuma that we were in, instead of just having 7 days of cleansing of a nida, because it was not if a woman in singular needs to wait 7 days, on a national level we waited 1 week for each of those days. We actually wait 7 weeks. So these 7 weeks are 7 weeks of nida, of separation, until we can reunite in marriage with our beloved. And it's said that when a woman waits 7 days of nida, every month it's like she's a bride reuniting with her groom again, because that distance is not for the sake of being distant. The whole reason to have that separation during those 7 days is not to make a husband and wife be distant. The Torah doesn't want husbands and wives to have space because intimacy is negative or lust is bad, to give us less of a lust. The opposite. The Torah wants to increase lust, to increase desire. And what happens is that when there's so much oneness, when even if two people are madly in love with one another, if they're together all the time and they're always in a oneness, they forget the preciousness of their oneness. They don't realize how precious their oneness is, because it's constant. It's always there. And when they're distant for a little bit, when they have a fight, for example, or when they are far away, when they're across the world, then there's a longing that reminds them how precious their oneness is, and then that reunification increases the desire, it increases the lust, it increases the passion, and it increases their oneness. So we learn that the deeper secrets of why, one of the mystical secrets of why Hashem created this, put this in place for a woman to be separated from her husband for 7 days, which nowadays is actually 11 to 13, 14 days, because of technical reasons. The reason for that is to remind them of their oneness, so that they have a stronger unity at the reunion, and so that they always have a stronger oneness. And even they've even done studies that couples who keep nida, couples who separate for 2 months of the year, end up having more physical intimacy than couples who per month, even though they're only allowed to be together for about 2 weeks, than a couple who's permitted to each other the entire month. Even within a marriage, sometimes there's couples that have months where they don't receive their period, so they wouldn't have nida, they wouldn't be separated. They have much more intimacy in a month when they have less days, because of the passion that is increased by the separation. So the purpose of separation in this case of Iyar, of this distance, which is Gvura, because Gvura presents distance and boundaries and space, and that the Iyar stemming from Gvura, which is reflected in the Hey Yud, in the reverse or flow of light in the order of the Hashem's name, is not for the intention of distancing us from God, of having boundary, and Hashem saying, you're so tamei, I need to be apart from you until you do your job and be holy. Or it's the opposite. It's we need to increase this longing and this desire. We want to grow so that our union is so much more powerful and so much more strong, that much more strong when we reunite. And that's why it's symbolized by the Vav, because the Vav is saying it's not a distance to, when I add Vav between your two names, it's not to create a space, although it does create a space, it's to unite them. And that's why, even though there's a gap, when I say and, although it separates two words, it ends up actually bonding them stronger. So that's really that depth of that separation of the nida period, and is to bond us, to have that bond, and that reunion be so much more powerful at the end, and with so much more desire and so much more closeness, and that oneness is even greater. And even to add to that, it's also so that in this time, what are we doing during this time of separation? We're not just saying bye, moving out of the house, and being like, I'll see you in 7 days. We're working on developing ourselves, because often in a relationship, when two people are so consumed with one another and they're so in love, the lines blur. It happens that the lines blur. Who I am and who you are, those edges start to blend. And what are my passions? What are my own desires? What are my own unique passions? If I'm doing everything with you, I forget who I am as an individual outside of you, right? What am I if not for you? And that's a scary thought. And that's not only scary because that could be beautiful, but the problem is that then there's nothing left to talk about. There's nothing left to bond over. Because if you and I are one, then there's no actual relationship. It's actually called a sheep relationship in that case. It's not a relationship of a true unity is when there's two individuals uniting as one, right? That's when you're bringing two together. But when we're just enmeshed in one another, there's not actually a relationship. We're just how Adam and Chava were in the beginning before God separated them, right? Adam was lonely then because his other half was attached to him. He's like, but there is no other. I want to connect with an other. I don't want to connect with myself, right? Can I think of myself as great, but then it gets lonely, right? So I don't want to marry an extension of myself, not because because I want an other. I want to grow. We want to challenge each other. We want to perfect one another. We want to fill in each other's gaps. But if we morph into one, then we don't do that anymore. So this time of nida for a husband and wife is to develop for each husband and wife has a chance to bond with one another, but where the lines are less blurred, where they each can also explore their individuality. Who am I outside of this relationship, so that I can have an individuality to then complete you and have this puzzle piece grow even more to one another. So it's a time to explore our individuality, and also it's time to explore our friendship, right? Because the true blessing we give to a husband and wife, and this is so beautiful, is that we should be re'im ahuvim. We should be re'im, which means best friends, and ahuvim, which are lovers. The true blessing is to be lovers and best friends, right? And that's very rare, especially even in marriages where people are in love with one another. They're just in love with one another. Being best friends, it's like you can't be best friends when you're in love. Like, no, like I'll do that with my best friend. It's too intense. But when you have this time of nida, you have a chance to cultivate that friendship. That time when we were dating, when we just can lay down and talk all night, but we don't have to. It doesn't have to lead to anything else. We're just talking about all of our hopes, dreams, fears, laughing together, playing together. We can enhance our playing and our laughing in an ideal state. And I'm not saying that nida is always perfect and doesn't come with challenges. It is very, very challenging. But hopefully we can also cultivate our friendship, so we can one day say, you're my best friend and my lover, you're my re'im ahuvim, right? So that's what the nida gives us a chance to do. And taking it back to the relationship with God, that Iyar is a time when we do just that. When we say that we were enmeshed with Hashem in Nisan, right? Hashem literally pulled us out. We were just like vessels, and we were fully like a hay, receiving all of godliness. And now's the time to step back, to have a little bit of nida, where we can cultivate who we are as an individual, where we can figure out who we are, and then reunite with God, so that there's actually a true relationship, which is the Gemini. So this is really amazing. This is actually they give a mashal in for these 3 stages, that these 3 months represent 3 stages of development in life. So we have 2 little babies over here. So 3 psychological stages of development are parallel to these 3 months. The first stage of development is called the let me look up the word. I want to say it's a dependent stage, but I forget the psychological term. Okay, I didn't even print it. It'll come to me. It'll come to me. What is it? What would you say is the stage before? There's the personal stage, then there's the interpersonal stage or transpersonal stage, and before the personal stage is I guess it's a dependent stage, I'll just call it. Okay, so there's the first stage in development is the sheep stage development. It's the dependent stage. It's where a child has no sense of self yet. So it's the baby is dependent on other people for everything that it needs. It's dependent on others for its food, for its nourishment, for its drink, to change its diaper, for everything that it needs. It has no sense of self. In fact, the baby in the womb thinks that it's one with the womb. It doesn't even know where it ends. And the baby slowly, the first inkling that your baby even knows that it even has a sense of self is when the baby starts to look at their hand and like see like, oh, my hand ends, and then the world starts, right? That's why babies are so fascinating with their hands, because there's a moment when they're like, oh, I'm a me, and then there's a world. I thought it's just like me and the world are one. I am the whole world, right? I'm everything. There's an other world outside of me. They don't even know that they're an individual yet. So the dependent stage, I wish I knew the psychological term for this, but there's the codependent stage, I guess, or the, not codependent, but there's a dependent stage where a child has absolutely no sense of self yet. They are dependent on everyone else, and they're like the sheep stage, a sheep just following its lamb. We give them and tell them what is right, what is wrong. We tell them who they are. We tell them right what they are and who they are, and everything that they need to know, we tell them what to do. Then comes the adolescent stage, and the adolescent stage is like the shore. It is the ox. It is called the self stage, the personal stage. It's when a child finally starts to want to stop being, the child is saying, I don't want to be an extension of you anymore. A sheep just being an extension of its leader. I want to be my own individual self. So that's when a child begins in small ways, when a child is already a toddler and he says, I want to eat myself. I want to dress myself. I don't want that. That's when a child is starting to move away from being completely dependent on others and not just being an extension of everyone else. And it's when they're beginning to form their sense of own self. And then it really peaks in adolescence. So the adolescent stage is called when a child completely is like a bull. A bull is like, no, this is my way or the highway, and it can express itself in stubbornness, in defiance, in whatever you say. A child will do an adolescent will want to do the opposite because you said it. And this is actually a very healthy stage of development, because in order for the child to reach the mature stage of adulthood, it needs to go through this stage of defiance, of saying, I am my own person, I'm not an extension of you. And that's why very healthy adolescents will resist anything their parents tell them to do, because they want to say, I'm not an extension of you, I am me, I'm my own self. No, I want it my way. Just because you said it, they will do the opposite, right? And that's why the Rebbe gave advice to somebody who was trying to influence their child to be a better kid. He said, it can't come from you, because whatever you say, your child will naturally say the opposite, which is healthy. It has to come from someone else, right? Because if you want your child to do something, right, then say the opposite. And that is a very healthy stage of developing their sense of self and identity. Who am I? What do I want? My individuality. And it could come across as self-centered, which it is, right? It's a time for them when they are very self-centered, and also comes when there's hormones, so it complicates everything. But they have a stronger, it's when they're discovering their identity, who they are, what they want. And this actually extends very much into adulthood. Even adults who are 30, 40, 50, 60 years old are still somewhat connected to this stage of development. Still trying to, we always go through this, going back to a little bit, dipping back into shore. And when we dip, one of the times we dip back into this stage of personal development is in Iyar. Iyar, everyone, even if they're adults who are older, who are already, in the mature stage of development, we also have to go back and refigure out who we are, what are my desires, who am I, right? Sometimes if somebody comes and meshes with someone else, they have to go back to this stage and revisit the stage of developing their own sense of identity. And who am I outside of the extension of my relationship? When somebody leaves a toxic relationship or leaves any good relationship, or when someone loses somebody, they have to start to rediscover, who am I? Throughout life we change. Who am I after having children? What are my own desires? What do I want to be? What does my life look after having no kids? Like my whole life, my whole identity was being a mom. What am I now, right? So this personal discovery, knowing who I am as an individual outside of everyone else, is this space of shore, of the ox, which is like a very determined stage, very stubborn, very self-focused, right? An ox is determined to have what it needs for itself, and it's not a negative stage. It's like we said, it's our animal soul, which is not negative. It's just it just is. It's just neutral, powerful koach. And that's why teens, actually, the Rabbi said that teens are the most powerful people. But youth, the voice of youth, and I think I touched on this in another class, that the confidence, the power that I felt, like the confidence in myself that I had as a teen, led me to do such great things. Like I could just run a marathon because I felt so powerful. I had such a strong sense of self and identity. I was like, I could do this. And now I'm like, I can't even do a 4K, but it's really all in my head, right? My sense of self was so much more powerful. And the Rebbe said that the people who change the world the most are the youth, because nothing stops them, because they're an ox, they're a bulldozer, they're going to bulldoze anything that gets in their way. The adolescents and the youth are the ones who have the strongest voice, right? They're the loudest, they're the strongest, and we should utilize that instead of telling them, tone it down, stop yelling. Why are you always yelling? Why are you making such a big deal? Just chill. Instead of telling them to chill, channel that powerful energy into good things. And the youth of Efrat, I have to say, are so amazing. They channel their energy to like doing beautiful things in memory of their friends who they lost. They're just always creating new snifim, right? These new snifim. They're coming up with new chesed projects, they're taking on new challenges. They're building benches and playgrounds. They're expanding, right, parks. They even, in some place, there's teams that built a mayan near, which yeshuv? One of the yeshuvim near Alon Shavut, the one that's near Alon Shavut, whatever it's called, not Rosh Surim, I forget what it's called, what? Yeah, whatever, part of like a different yeshuv. they built like a mayan. So like when you could take their tremendous power and then harness it and channel it towards bringing more light, it's the most powerful thing you can do. So we're not supposed to tame our ox. We're not supposed to like weaken our ox rather than just harness it to channel light towards good things. So if a teen is an environment where a parent can help them understand what's going on inside of them and help them realize what they're feeling and what they're experiencing and give them the proper love and guidance to like deal with all of their tremendous feelings, then they could actually, then that feeling is not necessarily, although it's difficult to deal with, although it's really hard to be around and it's hard for them as well. It can really be utilized, that power, for tremendous good, for tremendous light, to help them know how powerful they are and how great they are. But it can't end there, because that becomes, if a person stays in the stage of self-development, it becomes a point where people are like discovering themselves and doing personality analysis, and that's so great because you want to know who you are as an individual. But there's a point where it has to end, right? Because it could get to a point where it becomes self-obsessive, right? Self-centeredness is important to be focused on growing as an individual, but there's a point where it has to end, and I have to be able to see the world around me. And maturity, and the third stage of development, which is true maturity, which is the Gemini, which is in twins. Maturity is saying, yes, I know who I am now, right? It's not, maturity is not being a lamb and just doing what everyone else tells you. That's not maturity. True maturity, or true unity and true growth, is called the transpersonal stage, or the interpersonal stage, or mature stage of development. It's when I know what my feelings are, I have my own individual identity, I have my own opinions, and I also know that there's other people in the world that exist outside of me, right? Adolescence and adolescence age, it's like I'm the only one that exists right now, right? It takes over. It's just me, and no one else's feelings matter. And maturity is two things, in my opinion. Maturity is, one, I know what my feelings are, but I also want to consider what your feelings are in this. And there's also other people around me, so I can't just, express my feelings only. And in the same way, in another way, it's also, and really number two, or really an extension of this, is knowing what my feelings are, knowing what my desires are, having a strong identity, but also saying that just because I have that feeling, it doesn't mean that I always can express and do whatever I want. I could feel that, but I don't always get to say what I'm feeling, right? So maturity is having feelings, but also not always needing to express them, being able to keep our thoughts to ourselves, our feelings to ourselves, but know what they are. I feel, to me, that's maturity. Maturity is saying, yes, I feel that way, but it doesn't mean that I have to scream right now. It doesn't mean I have to yell and shout and get whatever I want. It's being able to see where I end and the world begins, and then harmonize the two of them. And that's why Nissan comes from the is from the middle balance beam, or the balance kav branch of the tree of life, from the stage of balance, because it's balance. There's an I, which is gvura, a sense of boundaries and myself, and there's also a chesed, there's also a you, and it's being able to merge the two of them that gives us that ability to be in a true relationship. And only when we get to that stage of development are we then ready to receive the Torah and Nissan. Only when there's a you and an I, and that's represented by Gemini, by twins. Twins is saying that the ultimate oneness is when I have not when two couples always agree on everything. When there's a couple, so let's bring this to relationships now, because we're going to take this metaphor. We spoke about this metaphor. Let's talk about it. We spoke about this metaphor in 3 stages of development of youth, of childhood, adolescence, and maturity. We spoke about it in 3 stages of like falling in love, being engaged, cultivating our sense of self to then marry God, right, as a stage of time. We spoke about it as a stage of developing ourselves to be in a relationship with God. So where we were receiving, and now we're bringing ourselves and developing our identity and growing, and in order to then be in a oneness with God. Also as space, in order to reunite with passion and longing, to create a space to have longing, to carve out a place to long and reunite with God. Is there anything else I missed? And then we also spoke about it as we also spoke about the 3 months as 3 columns, 3 energetic columns, right, of the tree of life, of the sign, that the right column, that's what the word was, the right column, the giving column, which is Nissan, the left column, which is Gvura, and the central column, which is Tiferes, balance. So now we're going to tie it together with the last thought on this topic. So for the last on this topic, we're going to tie it together with the 3 types of marriages. Or this, as the Rebbe says, there's 3 types of marriage. There's a Nissan marriage, which is a sheep marriage, where it looks like the couple is the perfect couple because they never fight. They never, ever, ever fight. They're like always getting along. They have the exact same opinion all the time. And if you look deeper, you'll realize that that couple is not a harmonious couple. It's not the ultimate couple. What's happening is that one of them is always submitting to the other. One of them is a sheep, one of them's wearing the pants, right? It doesn't have to be the guy or the girl, but one is wearing the pants and the other one is following along, and that's why they never fight, because one of them doesn't get to express themselves. One of them is either not aware of their own feelings or they're not sharing their own feelings, but somebody is not a self. So it's called the relationship of one, and that's why Nisan is the first month. There's only one person in this relationship. It's you with yourself. Then there's the next type of marriage, which is bulls. There's two individuals, right? It's a marriage of two. There's me and there's you. We both have strong opinions. Not one of us is, we both wear the pants. And what we're happening is we're butting heads like bulls or an ox, like a Taurus. And there's no actual unity because there's my opinion and your opinion. Sometimes I win, sometimes you win. One person always overpowers the other, but there's always two strong opinions. No, there is no harmony or unity. We're not coming to join together. And the third type of marriage, that's a marriage where you'll hear a lot of arguing, a lot of fighting, and a lot of gridlocking, because they're not able to move aside into the interpersonal mature stage where I could say, well, I have my opinion, but I also could hear your opinion, even though it's different than mine, right? It's like America right now is like a bull. There's the right and the left, and no one can listen to one another. There's no like, well, I could have my opinion and you can have your opinion and we could still be friends, right? No, it's like, if you don't have my opinion, I can't be your friend, right? If we can't get along, if you don't have my opinion. So the third stage of development, the mature stage, or the true unity and love, is twins. Twins represents, and Gemini is the sign of the next month of twins, and that represents the ultimate growth in that I'm not just submitting myself to you, I have my own feelings, but I'm also can live with you even though you have different feelings, and not only am I accepting the fact that you have different opinions than me and that you are an individual, that completes me even more. That's the fact that you are different than me is what makes us one. It's what makes me feel more complete. I have my opinion, and I'm so glad to have perspective from another type of opinion, because I want to enrich myself with someone else who's so different than me. I don't want to be married to myself. I want to be challenged. I want to be pushed. And that's the way that I feel in relationships. If you can't push me, I can't be friends with you. Friends who won't call me out on my stuff, they can't be my friends. I can't be their friends. It's a fake friendship. At this point in my life, I only have friends that will call me out, that will point things out to me, will point out when I'm need to be pushed to be better in some way, to point out my character flaws, to point out when I'm talking too much, I'm not letting them talk, etc., etc. Whatever they need to do, that's a true friend. A true friend is somebody who I'm appreciative that they're so different than me, that they can complete me and we can complete one another, and we can, that not that they have to be very different than me, but we have to be able to not always get along, that they'll voice their disagreements, that they'll voice when their opinion's different than mine, they'll voice that, and that not only makes me feel, that doesn't threaten me to make me be overpowering them and feel like I have to run away, but that rather that makes me feel so much more completed, because I realize how much we complete each other by my view being on this side and my opinion being here, and by being one, we literally fill in each other's gaps and puzzle pieces. It's like, well, I'm adventurous and you're cautious, and therefore we have a great harmonious balance, and things just balance each other out, right? That's the ultimate goal, and we could spend a lifetime trying to get to that. It doesn't mean that you can't get married if you have one type of relationship, another type of relationship. It means that in your marriage, you want to grow together to have that state of being in a twin relationship, a chosi, rayasi, yonasi, devasi, whatever, that highest level of connection. So you want to work towards that, and that's why that is the month of marriage. It's the month of receiving the Torah, where it says was our marriage to God. Okay, I'm gonna end for now because it's 42 minutes in. Actually, just kidding. I'm gonna just touch on, if you have to go, you have to go, but I'm gonna touch on, let me see if there's anything else important that I must touch on today. Okay, we're going to talk about light or healing. Light and healing, or time, or light and healing. Time? Okay. We're going to talk about time. Okay, so going back to what we said earlier about Sfiras HaOmer, that every single day we have a mitzvah to count the day and count the time. By doing that, we already said this, but by doing that, Iyar now connects Nisan to Sivan, because it counts every single day as a countdown, right? When I have a countdown, then every single day is connected to the one before it. So Sivan, or Iyar, connects Nisan by counting each day from Pesach till Shavuos. It unites all of them. Now, this is a time, the only time really, where we can realize how precious every single day is. By counting the day, we're telling ourselves every day of life is so precious. I hope my friend doesn't mind, but after talking about the tragedy that happened with the D family in Efrat, I was like, I wasn't here. I was in America with my family, and I was thinking like, how did people go on like trips with their family in Cholamayid? Like, how do they balance that out? Like feeling so empty and sad and broken from the tragedy, but also, yeah, people didn't have a choice. But on the one hand, they didn't have a choice. They had to take their kids on a trip because the kids are not the ones broken, right? I mean, kids are Baruch Hashem like kids. But she said that it was the opposite for her. She felt like you realize how precious every single day is. This family, she just Talia D, the older daughter, just posted a blog yesterday, a post that she said, I never thought that my family, that this would happen, that my family would be the ones that were the terror victims. Like, we look at these things and we're like, you never think it's going to be you. We never think that in one day someone could, God forbid, that could happen. And she said, if anything, it made her realize that every single day counts. I have a day now to spend with my family. Instead of being home mourning, I'm gonna utilize the day that God gave me. God gave me a day. I'm gonna fill it. And this is a beautiful thought of Rabbi Trugman in his book, Rabbi Trugman in his book, Becoming a Master of Time, says, beautiful, time is a vessel waiting to be filled. How will you fill it? Every day we're counting. We're saying, you have another day. You have another day. How will you fill this day? It's a day. It's an empty. It's this vessel, right? We have to fill it with all the things that we want to fill our day with. And when we look at it that way, time becomes so valuable, so precious. So instead of saying like, how will I mourn, right? And how will I feeling? It's like, let me just move from that into what can I fill this day with? What is the most precious things to me? What is so valuable to me that I want to put into this day? That what am I putting into my day? And it helps us prioritize and really think about my day. Well, which things am I going to work on today? How will I prioritize my importance, right? And sometimes taking a break is very important as well. And I need that in order to fill my day, right? So it's not like you should never stop and never rest. We don't have to run and be a marathon, but it helps us think about which things we want to spend our time focusing on. What do I want to put my attention and my precious time into? And this connects so much to the tribe of the month. Yisachar, in Divrei Hayamim, the Sefer Divrei Hayamim, it says that Yisachar was, I brought the pasuk for you, I think, Ubnei Yisachar Yodei Bina La'itim. It says the people of Issachar are men who knew how to interpret the signs of the times. They had the Bina, they had the wisdom to know the time. And it's interesting that Bina comes from the left column, right, of the tree of life, to determine how we should act. Now, what did Yisachar do? You know that Issachar and Zvulun were twin brothers who had a partnership. Zvulun made the money. He was they were the merchants, and they supplied Yisachar with the funds so that Yisachar can learn. And therefore, Yisachar, by learning, gave the schus, or the merit of their learning, to Zvulun, shared that schus, and Zvulun shared their physical wealth with Yisachar, and they had a partnership in that way. And Yisachar says that because they were such wise people, they were so knowledgeable, what did they do with their knowledge? One of the things that they did was that they calculated the calendars. When we count the new moon, right, today's a Rosh Chodesh class, when we count the new moon, we announce in Shul, they announce the Molad. They announce the Molad. What is Molad? Molad is the first appearance of the new moon. Who decided what the Molad is? So if in Shul they announced that the Molad this month, the Molad of Iyar will be on, when was it this year? On Thursday night at 12:49 a.m. and 49 halakim, right? So we announced in Shul that I'm making up the Molad, but it's exact time to the minute and to the second, and I think to the partial second of when, and this is true, and then it happens, you look outside, and that is when the slither of the new moon appears. So the Molad, when the moon is birthed again, that is where Chodesh, that's when you count your new month, and that's when we establish all of our festivals. So it was important that Yisachar calculate when the moon is going to appear, because depending on when the moon appears, that tells us when the first day of the new month is, and that will tell us when we celebrate all of the holidays, because the holidays are celebrated on the 14th of the month, and you have to know when is the first day. You have to be able to travel. You have to be able to know in advance. So they have to tell us in advance when the months would be, so we know when the holidays are. Now, this is crazy because they were so knowledgeable. They used their knowledge and their bina and their tremendous knowledge to interpret the signs up above and the stars and whatever the signs of the world was, to foresee till Mashiach comes every single month to the millisecond. Okay, how crazy is that? And now the craziest thing is that now scientists or scientists and astrologers have the technology to do the exact same thing with tremendously powerful technology that was not available a few thousand years ago, and they are coming to the exact same calculations that Yisachar got with their knowledge of Torah. So they had this tremendous knowledge in this month of Iyar, to calculate time. So we see that Yisachar, who's the tribe of the Shevet that connected to this month, and in this month we see an innate connection to understanding time, to valuing time, and to knowing that time changes, right? In every month there's a shifting of time. So some months, this month especially, is a month, so let's talk about practically. In Iyar, it's a month to be very goal oriented, to achieve our achievements, to get out of our hibernation. And even though we're working on our sense of self and we're developing our character traits and we're working on who we are inwardly, we're also accomplishing. It's a month like a bull who's a bulldozer who can accomplish a lot because there's tremendous flow of light in this month. There's a lot of fire and there's a lot of light, and by a bull being an earth sign, it's also very practical. So it's not just taking this light and keeping it in the spiritual, it's a time to now move forward with our goals. It's also a time when we don't have that many chagim at all. We have Lag BaOmer, which is a fire, a time when we light bonfires, and it's a time when the light of the Zohar was revealed to us. So Shimon Bar Yochai passed away, and he revealed to his students the greatest light that we have until today, the light of Kabbalah. So it's a time when there's so much power and light. So it's a time when we can really harness that light, and it's also a time, if we don't harness that light for good things, that we have to be very wary and careful and cautious, because light and fire can either illuminate and give energy. Fire is energy and it's power and it's electricity, and it can fuel all of our growth, and we can grow from stage 1 to 49 in a very successive way, not in Nissan of leaping, but in step after step, one day after the next day, and building up in a very stable way. But it can also destroy. If fire is not used for holiness, then fire can destroy and burn down homes and burn down cities and burn another person. And with love as well, it says that Ish and Isha are fire, are passion. And that's why the only difference between us is the man has the yud. The names man and woman are Ish and Isha. They both have the word Ish, fire, in them. And if they bring down the yud and the hey of God into it, then we can live in harmony. But if not, if we utilize if we take the male, female passion and fire and chemistry and it's used in negative ways, it can be destructive. If we don't do it in a holy way with respect and boundaries and godly awareness and awareness of the godliness of another person, and that I can't possess them or own them or touch them without their permission, right? Without the awareness of the innate godliness of another person, then there can be destruction and real pain that comes from that female male energy and passion. So we have to be very careful around that energy, right? That's why we guard it so many ways. And we also guard this passion and this fire in this month, because if not utilized, we learned that what happened in many years ago in this month was that the students of Rabbi Akiva had so much love for one another and passion and heat and fire, that it, without respect, without boundaries, without balancing it out with Gvura, without knowing that although I love you so much. So let's go back to the story. So in this month, something I didn't mention was that besides for counting the Omer, we also don't listen to music, we don't get haircuts, and we don't get married in this month. It's a time of mourning. Why are we mourning and doing all these sad things in this month? We're mourning the death of Rabbi Akiva, a great sage in the Talmud. 24,000 of his students passed away in this 49-day period, except for Lag BaOmer, when they stopped dying. They stopped dying, and that's in Lag BaOmer we celebrate, and we can get married, and that's why there's tons of weddings in Lag BaOmer. Baruch Hashem, we can get haircuts and listen to music, etc. So there's no concerts now, and we don't rejoice excessively because we're mourning their deaths. We're not just mourning the deaths of people we didn't know that many years ago. And what's really crazy on it as a tangent is that the 24,000 is, we also commemorate the 24,000 soldiers, or rounded 24,000 soldiers or terror victims in Eretz Yisrael in Iyar as well, in Yom HaZikaron, which is really weird. Or unusual connection. So, or maybe that's why I did it. So this energy shows us that Rabbi Akiva students, the reason that they died, what do they die from? A plague. And the plague was a punishment because they were disrespectful to one another. And what happened was that they couldn't make space for one another. And they fought and argued. And they says that they stemmed because Rabbi Akiva was the one who taught, V'ahavta l'recha kamocha. So the Rebbe says, how could the teacher, whose number one principle was that loving your fellow man is more as equal to keeping the entire Torah. So how could that even be? That people who were their own teacher preached that you have to love the Avos Yisrael is more important and on one foot more important than the entire Torah. How could they act with unkindness one another and cause them to have a plague? So we actually learned that they had so much love for one another, their fellow students, that when they saw their students interpreting Torah and learning Torah in a way that they felt was wrong, they said, I love you so much, I'm not going to ignore the fact that you're learning it wrong. And they would shout at them, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. How could you say this? You can't say this. You can't believe this. I can't believe you can't believe this. And it came from a place of love. It came from, I love you so much. If I didn't love you, I wouldn't care what you learned. Learn Torah wrong, interpret it your way. And they couldn't even accept that their friend could learn something in a different way than them. So there was so much love without fear, without respect, without gevura, without balancing it. So there was so much chesed without gevura and that balance that it consumed them. They consumed their friend and they couldn't make space for them, and that disrespect they had for one another and led to this plague that killed all of them. And we learn from this, the power in this month is so great, but we want to also be wary of the power in this month because it's a lot of fire, a lot of intensity in this month. So we want to be able to make sure that this month we're being cautious, right? We're putting safeguards. We're realizing that just like those students, we're commemorating their deaths and realizing that we also want to make sure that we're mindful every day by not listening to music, by not getting haircuts. We're remembering that we want to put safeguards around this month to know that there's so much power and that we want to utilize it to grow in a positive way and not to let it overcome us and allow us to bulldoze our way over other people, right? Because as much as we want to grow, we have to have and the ox wants to be right self-growth and work on ourselves. We still have to be aware that there's other people and we have to be respectful of people around us and take that into consideration and be cautious and have yirat shamayim. So that's where yira comes to be the balance to the great fire. So there's fire from above, but there's also a lot of gvura and boundaries, and we're trying to balance that in this month. And really the whole avoda of Sfiras Omer truly is the way we fill our time is by going into our midos, into our quality traits, and looking for balance, right? Being able to balance our love with boundaries, and are making sure that if we have too much boundaries or too much no in space, that we're adding more love, so we can have balance that with much more love and compassion, so that we can develop the greatest way that we can. L'chaim, thank you for joining. Last but not least, Iyar is a time of healing, of tremendous healing, for a lot of reasons, but mostly that we have a verse in Shemos that Ani Hashem Rofecha, that even though healing comes through doctors, through medicine, the true healer, the source of all healing is Hashem, Ani Hashem Rofecha. And we tap into that healing energy that also comes, Hashem gave the sun a lot of healing power, so it's a month where the sun begins to shine very strong. So we have this month that is an amazing time to tap into healing, to dive into Hashem for healing, and to tap into not natural healing, but to go Iyar is the 8th month, so to go to the source of supernatural healing, that sees the natural order of 7 of the balance of the world, or the natural order of the world, so we can get to supernatural healing that comes from a higher level than nature. And we see it as an acronym that the verse Ani Hashem Orfecha, I am Hashem your God, as an acronym for Iyar. Aleph, Ani, Yud for Hashem's name, and Rofecha, Iyar. I am Hashem your God, I am Hashem your healer. And also in number 8, connection to number 8, the 8th tefillah, the 8th blessing in Shemona Esrei is the blessing of Rafa'enu Hashem, heal us God. So we can have extra kavanah during that time, and anyone who needs healing in any way, physical healing should be healed, emotional healing, mental healing, Hashem should heal the hearts of all those who are brokenhearted by the loss of anyone who was killed. Spiritual healing in our midos, healing in any relationship that we have. Hashem should bless us all with healing and growth during this month, and I'll see you next month.
Amen.